Good morning, everyone. We're here today. We've got Andrew McDougall from John Holland Group. He's going to talk to us about his role in social impact.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us. This is part of our Social City series on the Deconstruction podcast. And we really want to get into those that are making an impact in the construction industry and the built environment and the things that they're doing. So to kick things off, can you just tell us a little bit about your current role at John Holland and what an average day might look like and what someone in your role typically undertakes?
Yeah, certainly. Happy to. So my role, I'm a social impact manager for Queensland and Northern Territory. I also assist some of our WA operations, albeit we don't do as much in the West as we do on the East Coast. A typical day, it can be anything from working in pre-contracts, so obviously about that, the next project that we're looking to secure and deliver, through to our projects in delivery, about how we can support them to obviously drive greater impact, whilst they're operating, wherever it might be around the country. And then, I always just put the, or other, so pre-contracts, delivery or other, because there's always a myriad of different things that, that are required to obviously just improve culture and to, just, I guess, your BAU type of work to continue as an organisation. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the, it can be very varied, and it can be any number of different things that can be done on any different day.
And it's a pretty niche and unique role. Can you tell us a little bit about your background to how you came to be in this role and whether it's something that, you always knew that you were going to go into, and kind of how your career developed to get into your current role?
Yeah, so look, it's not something that I imagine that I would be doing, that's for sure. The, if I take you back to the beginning, I, through high school, don't tell my children, but did I apply myself? Absolutely not.
All the secrets are coming out in the podcast now.
Yeah, it's all good. They'll watch this one day, hopefully after they've finished school. But, so I didn't have like a set idea about what I wanted to do or anything like that. My idea was that I actually wanted to work in radio. So it's ironic that here I am. Much like a radio panel. Well, interestingly, I'm committed, if nothing more. So I actually took an opportunity with a local radio station, thinking that was going to be my career. Quickly, only to realise that it was all very digital, and I had no idea. I was way out of my depth, and so I actually took a traineeship opportunity at the local TAFE college. So working for the TAFE in ICT. And that was far from obviously something that I was passionate about, but working in the TAFE system, that was what led me into training and development and employment and things. And, I worked there for a period and then sort of dovetailed into a few other organisations and ultimately ended up at John Holland the first time that I'd worked there. And I say that because I'm a John Holland boomerang where, I worked there and it was quite fulfilling for several years. Left and actually went to go and work on another big, large construction project, largely one that was in an area that experienced some socioeconomic challenges. And really I was able to take that background around training and employment to then obviously apply some of those things to, to this community that we were then suddenly working in. And from there, I certainly... it's diverse, if nothing more. Had a few different experiences. I spent some time with Defence, and I got to work overseas with the Army. I wanted to pivot away from, and do something different, so I went and worked for the National Science Agency, the CSIRO.
Wow.
And then ultimately, I kind of joke that all things lead back to construction. All roads lead back. In this instance, It was rail, because I ended up at Cross River Rail working client side before then the boomerang returned to John Holland, and I've now been there for the last 4 and a bit years. So that's kind of the, I guess my pathway, in a bit of a nutshell. I was really keen to do something fulfilling, and when obviously the opportunity at John Holland presented itself to come and return, because I had a fondness for the business from the first time around, I thought, look, that's definitely something that I was keen to kind of give back, I suppose, and continue to build on all of the skills and knowledge and everything else that I'd attained from all of that aforementioned kind of career to apply in this business now.
Yeah, I think that's a real credit to John Holland then, that you've been a boomerang employee. I think moving into Helix turns 10 next year, so I'm looking forward to that kind of boomerang
Yep.
people coming back. We've held on to some good Helix humans along the way, but yeah, I think there's something really special about people that are happy to return to.
I think it's a testament to the business.
Yeah,
They've created an environment and culture that you enjoy, and that's why I always say to people, ensure that you obviously, leave on the best possible terms, because, it's a very small industry, like
Absolutely.
many people, our paths cross, be it through Narwick or Hutchinson Builders or any number of other pathways. So, yeah, look, it's, it's not uncommon that all of a sudden individuals across the industry are working together, so.
Yeah. And I think being supported to explore a role such as the one that you're in with John Holland is pretty special as well. So I think sometimes Morgan and I struggle to convince the industry about the return on investment from a community impact perspective, but then from a hard dollar perspective as well. And I really have this approach where, we're going to build it anyway, we're going to spend the money. How about we just think about what else we can do with that dollar to make it go further and make it have an impact beyond the profit we're going to make at the end of the job, or beyond the traditional hard dollar values that we look at. Do you feel that support, and are you encouraged to keep on the path that you're on as far as the impact that you and the business that you work within can make in the industry?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that, having now done this for quite some time and working client side, probably one of the challenges that I do see is that, to your point around that value, value is far greater than just the hard dollar cost, right? But that can be challenging when obviously budgets are tight and people are trying to make profit margins and all of those sorts of things. And probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, is even articulating to our clients that, look, there's an expectation that we do all of these extra things over and above building an asset itself. It does come at a cost. Sometimes there's that suspicion, you're just trying to get more money out of it, and I guess part of that is about actually an education piece to say, well, no, actually, just to do some of these initiatives, actually there is a cost involved, and we're not talking substantial dollars, right? The impact that you can have from a fairly modest investment, though, can be, far outweigh the investment that is being made. And and I guess I feel myself quite fortunate that we've got to a point within the business that we're going to do things regardless about whether or not it's it's a client mandated, because some of it is, right. Regardless of whether or not we've budgeted for it or not, because sometimes things get missed, or priorities change, but we still go, well, you know what, we can see the value in doing it, so we are going to invest in, and even just to to actually have the people capital like myself, and my colleagues across the business, through to actually then the opportunities you provide, there's value in doing that regardless.
I think that flexibility is important too. During my time at Hutchie's, in probably a similar role to what you do as well, I always loved that we had flexibility. You would have a strategy and, you had initiatives and things in place that you did, but we were never too hard and rigid that you could also take opportunities. So sometimes you don't know until you get there, especially when you work regionally and remotely, that then you get there and, we might have, budgeted to use this contractor to do something in particular, but then this other amazing opportunity comes up. So having the backing of the company to be able to capitalise on some of those things that otherwise just wouldn't have fit into the box, I think is something that I really enjoyed. Yeah,
look, I certainly agree. I think if, it's one of the most overused words thanks to COVID, but, if you can pivot, or be agile, any buzzword you want to really use, flexibility, sometimes there is just opportunity that comes knocking, and you kind of go, oh, look, actually, this seems like something that was not part of the plan, but this seems like something we should, grab the ball and run with, to use a rugby league, type of analogy. But absolutely.
I think we talk about risk a lot, and people assume that, things cost time and money, which they absolutely do, or they don't have the expertise. So sometimes it's just a fear of you don't want to do the wrong thing. So they do nothing at all. So I really like to do that as well, talk about the opportunities, because I think that's where we can kind of do that education piece and get people to be a bit desensitized, and they realize that it was actually a really great thing and there was no adverse consequences. So I think, that's something that as an industry we should probably talk about a little bit more.
R&O, a great industry term, risk and opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I guess my approach has always been, we need to be pragmatic, right? And the example that I provide to people, particularly, like I provide, a bit of guidance for what it's worth to people who are interested in this domain as well. And one of the big things that I sort of say is that, if you use a, social procurement or a procurement opportunity through First Nations business, whatever it might be, I completely understand that if, our business or a manager or, or a competitor, whoever, if they've got a relationship with a particular supplier, a particular subcontractor, what I'm not saying is, okay, well, let's just tear that up and walk away and then go to some unknown entity, right? Because there's been over time, there's trust and relationships that have been built and, and it's proven. So I understand why you keep going back to the same supplier. However,
Yeah.
how, is that sustainable forevermore? Or, we need to look at how do you diversify and actually give somebody else an opportunity. When you talk about the risk, we're not saying go and give this person a $10 million contract, tomorrow at all, because that's actually probably a poor way to do it. Be transparent with this, stakeholders and say maybe something small, it's small but meaningful, and it's an opportunity to get the foot in the door to then go, all right, how do we then turn this risk into an opportunity to say, here's an additional supplier that actually has the capability, the capacity, and a whole bunch of other, kind of benefits that might flow to communities or whatever their social purpose is, to then, start from that $100,000 contract to $1 million to then grow to the 10 million or whatever the numbers may be. So
Yeah.
Because that one decision can have a big impact as well. We had Kieran Lander on the podcast previously, and he's an Indigenous man and he owns a business in the construction industry. And he spoke about the opportunities that he can then create for others because those opportunities have been given to him, and the difference, the knock-on effect, like he's able to employ more people, he's able then to do more with the spend that he has as a business as well, and that really drives and empowers a knock-on effect beyond just the decision that's been made about giving someone else a go.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a large motivator for why we do it, right? Because we need to go and purchase a product or a service or whatever it might be, regardless, right? So how do you try and make that, again to that earlier comment, how do you try and make that dollar actually create added value? And it doesn't always occur, right? Like again, as much as I'd like to be able to, in my role, I'd like to see every contract go to First Nations business, social enterprise, whatever it might be. That's not reality, and I think everybody understands that. But if we can make that incremental change and and try and create some of those, additional benefits that are actually coming from our procurement decisions, and I think it's a tremendous thing.
Yeah, I think measuring value comes into that as well, and the being able to not just give an anecdotal position or I've got a feeling that, or this makes me feel good, or this creates a good vibe, or it's good for culture. There's so many things.
Castle, it's just the vibe.
Yeah, it is
it's the vibe. Yeah.
There's so many things beyond that now, and I know particularly Morgan helps a lot of businesses with identifying the impact that initiatives have, and those measurements, and being able to understand the impact you're having by measuring what did this new initiative do, or what are we currently doing within the business, where are we spending our money. And one of the things that we've done as a business within Helix is look at where we're spending money, what's happening with our procurement. Because when I first met Morgan, I'm like, well, I want to be doing something, but we don't know where to start, or
small, and just start. To Morgan's comment, just start. Rather than
blew my mind. There was one conversation, one email, and we were away. And then the thing that was good about doing the measuring was that we were doing things just, without even thinking about it, that were really positive things that as, the leader within the business.
That's a testament to I guess the ethos though as well, right? Because, you want to be able to just be doing it because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to, being told that's what you have to do.
But it felt very encouraging too, because I was like, oh, maybe I'm not such a loser. Maybe I'm already doing these things that made me feel inspired that I can do more, because I was already doing kind of the base level, and we were doing it without even thinking about it. Then imagine the things that we can achieve.
If we make a conscious decision.
Now that we're measuring it, and things like once we looked at it, during the financial year, we spent more on female barristers than we spent on male barristers, which for a firm on the law firm side of things that services the construction industry, that was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, like that's a little,
and then I realised that our water supplier is an Indigenous business, and I'm like,
Waddy Springs or they
just have a great business, and so we were already away in some of the initiatives and things that we were doing. Do you want to stop my phone from ringing? Thank you.
I think that really helps us move too from that risk to opportunity, where it's all a little bit unknown and nobody really knows. So when you do that deep dive and you've already actually been doing these things, I think that also helps to show that it's not always all about risk. There's also that opportunity there when you're already doing something and it's been working really well. So that encourages people to take that next step and to stretch their strategy.
Yeah, and one of the things that I regularly sort of talk about in our business is that we actually want to try and actually take some of the good news stories and some of the things that have been working well, and you want to share it, and be that internally or externally. Always I talk about balancing on the tightrope though, because you want to celebrate the successes, and the reason for that is that then gives the impetus for it to occur again, and for people to actually get that kind of feeling of okay, I contributed to that, okay, you did that, that's great, I can do that, so then you can do more. But at the same time, what you don't want to do is then be taking these stories and just promoting them to no end, because then in my mind it almost becomes that exploitative type of, like, are you doing it for the right reasons, as such, or are you doing it for marketing purposes or anything? So, so I definitely think that, like, you do have to celebrate the successes, but, at the same time, be genuine about it, what you're promoting.
Agree.
It's a very interesting topic, and I've probably had that conversation a lot too over the years, and explaining to people that if we don't talk about it, then nobody else can see that or realise that that's possible. But it's also that thing, I think us as an industry, or maybe generationally, I think the next generation are probably going to be a bit better at it than us, but we're all a little bit humble, and you just get on with the hard work and you just do it. And you do it because it's the right thing to do, or because you had the outcome you want, or you had more commercial success from doing it that way. But we really find it hard to talk about the good things sometimes that we do. I think we eat a little bit of humble pie sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and again, I think it's not always a bad thing, because I have observed that, sometimes certain people, they might take what is a very, very small thing that's been done and make it out to be extraordinary, and I kind of think, look, it's probably all helping to an extent, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit disingenuous, and and that's, I don't know.
That's where our measurement and that can really be that benefit, where it's not just what we did, but what was the outcome and what was achieved, and whether or not that's for ourselves as a business or whether that's for empowering other people. And that's something that I probably love the most, is that legacy piece, where you do that one thing at the time, but that empowers the community to keep building on their economic position or their employment, and it just enables them to do it themselves too. I think that it's not a lot of fun having people tell you what to do or doing things for you, that we support them a lot better.
I feel like, in these roles as well, you can actually become quite emotionally invested as well, right? That you can see, like, these are people we're talking about, or communities, and all you really want is to see positive outcomes, right? And then when something falls over or it doesn't transpire or something like that, you can sometimes be a little bit despondent, or personally I feel a bit despondent, because you kind of think, but I could see how great that would be, but we haven't done it,
or it worked last time, but it didn't work this time because
absolutely.
the community's different,
But one thing I always say is that, as individuals, there's only so much, you can do, and you can drive and you can push and things like that, the outcomes that you can achieve, but as a collective, you can still make sure that you can get other allies and advocates, and, and always sort of say, if you can, if for somebody that might have been provided an opportunity, make sure you pay it forward, right? Because that's the most powerful thing, that if they can pay it forward to then create that ripple effect, then I think that's going to be better for everybody as well.
Absolutely.
Then eventually I can retire and sit on the beach and, because everybody's doing good stuff.
Hopefully we'll be joining you.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work with the Queensland government previously and local councils, and so they have procurement targets that they want to meet and initiatives that they want to see on their projects. We did a lot of work around ethical procurement and building those requirements into the Queensland government contracts and training around that. And I found that a rewarding project to be involved with, because the whole idea that the government is a major spender of money in our industry, and when it comes down to it, all the policy that they were dealing with and all the requirements that we train people on how to deal with all comes back to, we want to spend our money with ethical businesses. And as a business owner myself, I think, well, what's wrong with that? Because I try really hard for our business to be a values-driven, ethical business. So why should I lose a contract to someone who's obviously constantly doing the wrong thing, has the wrong agenda, is coming in to the market and doing the wrong thing every time? They should be weeded out of the competition. Absolutely. And so, do you engage with the government a lot in your role, and do you feel that sense of, the purpose behind some of the things that you're asking your business to do, that you're asking people to get on board with John Holland? Do you feel that kind of connection with that purpose too?
Absolutely.
As a human,
Yeah. So look, I mean, like I indicate, it's a very small world, right? And, so we speak with a lot of the different government agencies, and, to the extent where I think that, that they regularly want to even understand our insights from the coalface to see, well, what are the challenges that if we're implementing these policies, I think it's upon us to actually, kind of work with them to, to get a proper understanding, because, essentially, a failure, if we fail, they fail, right? And our suppliers fail, it's a failure everywhere. So you really want to just make sure that there's things that are, that are practical, that are achievable, and, one of the things that I think about is that, much to your comments there, Janelle, it is a bit frustrating even for us when sometimes you think, oh, we've got all these tremendous things that we're proposing that we want to deliver as part of project delivery, but then it goes to another contractor that might have just been cheaper. You know what I mean? I know it is. Yeah, and look, and I certainly don't want to talk about competitors or anything like that, because many of them are doing some great stuff too.
And look, we appreciate that it's a tough old game to be able to get anything built these days as well. It is a really hard market.
And financially, as a state, we're all taxpayers. We know that it's got to be spent responsibly, so they don't want to pay extra money for, just for the sake of it. So I understand all of that, but to the policy one, look, we in roles like the one that I do, you really need to understand those policy objectives, the targets and things like that, because in a lot of instances, you're the conduit to our teams, right? Because we've got technical people that are, great at building structures or, great at doing earthworks or whatever it might be. But it's actually trying to say, well, look, we need to actually have a balance here, that it's not just about how quick you can build it or how cheap you can build it. There's actually a whole range of other policy settings that, that we are being asked by our clients to actually deliver upon. And I think that when you can articulate that, sometimes there's a bit of the, I can't believe we've got to do all of this, but yeah, okay, let's move on with it, right? It is what it is, because they just go, I just want to pour concrete or whatever, but okay, well, what have I got to do? And that's when it's the opening up of the conversation to say, okay, here's how we can actually go on to achieve some of those policy requirements.
And the benefits go far beyond just that one person you're employed or the one business contract that came through for a diverse business as well. As a business, I think we get a lot of innovation, we get diverse thinking, we get more efficient. By having all these different people and different businesses, it actually helps our business as well. So we might actually build things quicker or in a safer way as well, because we know that different types of people have different levels of risk as well that they're comfortable with. So I think we fail sometimes to talk about the benefits to business and outside of just the community benefits. So I think that's probably a message that as an industry and even in policy and that we can probably educate people on as well, is that it's also good for business.
And you mentioned it before about that capability building, right? Like, we know obviously as an industry here locally in Queensland that there's just an extraordinary amount of work that needs to happen over the next sort of 7 or so years. I think that, what you've seen is that there's been a really a large attraction to the stadium for the Olympics and 2032, and and that's a big and fantastic opportunity. But that's only one thing that's going to happen. There's all of the other Olympics infrastructure in parallel to all of the transport infrastructure.
Housing.
There's housing. There's there's water treatment. There's you name it. It's all coming, right? And to the capability building piece, we know that they're going to actually need to try and build up supply chains because there's not enough subcontractors and people to go and do it all. So if you can start early and actually start to see some of these businesses that may not quite have the safety standards or the commercial contract management skills or whatever it might be, that it's starting small and actually building them, it now prepares them better to actually then contribute to to our industry, and which makes it a more sustainable industry all around.
Do you have any tips, I guess, for other businesses that maybe aren't as established as John Holland that might want to start to help out some of those businesses? Are there any key things that you do, I guess, breaking down some of those packages to smaller packages?
Yeah, and funny with the breaking down packages, unbundling, sometimes that works perfectly, but then one thing that I guess I'll also say is that sometimes that's a challenge for our teams, right? Because all of a sudden a contracts administrator needs to manage two contracts instead of one, right? Yep. What I'd say is that just start small, all right? Probably the big thing that I always think is that don't try and conquer the world overnight. Don't try and go, oh, now let's go and procure $100 million in social procurement and employ, instead of 100 people we're going to employ, because you're setting yourself up for failure. Probably to your comment before, it's just instead of doing nothing, do something, and just to start small, right?
We started with one event. We threw an International Women's Day event, and we said, okay, only Indigenous suppliers or female-owned businesses. And the entire thing, the flowers, the chef, the restaurant, everything was everything.
Awesome. And I would even go as far as saying that's probably one bigger thing, I even say, to your water supply, can you swap your water supply, or something like that, there's so many just small things that you can do, and it's the, kind of the Paul Kelly song, From Little Things, Big Things Grow,
We'll play that.
You're right, okay, right, yeah, maybe I should have gone with that one for my favourite song, or I don't know, but yeah.
Is there a community that you've established? We talked about how you've got a pretty unique role at John Holland. Obviously, Morgan's a very like-minded person, and she's had a similar role at Hutchies in the past. Is there a community of support that you have in your role? One thing that really blew my mind when I first met Morgan was the connections that she had and how easily she could tap someone who we needed to be able to fulfill some of our social and ethical objectives, and that sense of community that she was able to build up really has helped to enhance our business and enhance the businesses who engage with her and who take on her services.
There 100% is, right, and there's layers to the onion, right? So when we talk about communities, right, so internally within our business, we've got like a community of practice of professionals that work across a few different areas, but not least social impact, throughout our business, because sometimes there's things that you need to discuss internally, right? Not everything is for public consumption. It's bouncing ideas off without obviously creating any kind of offence or whatever it might be, doing the wrong thing, fear of doing the wrong thing. I think you said before, Morgan, through to outside of that. There's actually, there's a national community of practice that, that's facilitated through the University of Technology Sydney, where you bounce ideas off of one another, through to more locally. I find that sometimes the best, kind of networks are just some of your peers, right? And, what I'd say is that, I recognise that in our industry, there's competition, to win and secure works, to deliver projects, all of those sorts of things. But in this domain, it's actually not really a competitive space. And I think that if people are authentic and being genuine about it, you're actually happy to just kind of go and talk to somebody over at a competitor and be like, oh, hey, you should really give this. We've just been using this mob and they're awesome, you should give them a start, or, hey, do you know somebody that blah, whatever it might be? Oh, yeah, so, even to the extent where, sometimes it is even that, bouncing ideas off to kind of go, oh, we're thinking about this or we're experiencing this challenge, which I probably shouldn't tell you about, but, but I'm experiencing this challenge. And, are you experiencing it too? Or, do you have a way that you can kind of overcome it? And, I think that, yeah, look, there's that, like I said, the layers of the onion. That there's all these peer networks and support networks there that we can tap into to, just try and get the best possible outcomes.
I think that's a testament, though, too, to John Holland as well. And I was certainly fortunate with that at Hutchies as well, that you're always given that permission, I guess, to have those conversations and to work with the industry more broadly. It wasn't always about just Hutchies or just our outcome. We were often privileged to be able to work with other people that, everyone else might see as a competitor, but we're really fortunate to be able to build some of those relationships.
I indicated before, you wouldn't be shocked if you were wearing a John Holland logo and you were wearing a CPB one, and then next minute I'm in a Hutchies one. It's not to indicate that we're kind of all just leave our businesses, but the reality is that's natural. That naturally happens, right? We all end up working for different organisations. If we remain in the same industry, you're all pretty close. So, I think that it's definitely something that all those peers might be a colleague at some point, or they might be interviewing you on a podcast at some point,
What about any advice for someone who might be having career aspirations towards their goal of being in a role like yours? You've had a very diverse, career experience that's led you to where you are. Is there any advice that you would give them if they're looking at you going, oh, that's what I want to be, or that's what I want to do for my job?
I'm not sure how many people are looking at me there, thinking that's what I want to be. Like
not true.
My children don't even know what they want to do, but it's not me. So
I think the next generation has very much got their eye on your job. That kind of fulfilling role where you're making an impact, but you're still in a really exciting industry. You're working for a great company. It's a great career.
Interestingly, my son actually, he's in high school, and he had to do some kind of, they call it a career bullseye, to try and work towards what might interest you. And interestingly, it was like a lot about doing something for others. Maybe it might be. And he said, "What's this human resources stuff, Dad?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's have a conversation about that, which I didn't think interested him at all. So anyway, to the advice, I think that one of the things is that there's no linear pathway to get here, and I think that that could be said of obviously a lot of careers. In our industry, the engineer is probably the most atypical. That you do engineering at university and then you become a graduate and then a site engineer in construction, or project engineer. Whereas, I guess in these roles, you could probably speak to 24 different people and every one of them would have a different pathway. I think that why I articulate that is that if it's something that you actually want to do, there's a myriad of different ways you can get there. I think it's about actually trying to tap into those networks, that was spoken about before, to understand how people, what their particular pathway was. For me, a strong background in that training and development, employment, which then dovetailed into understanding more around procurement, and because you're not born with all of these skills and knowledge. You've got to acquire it over time, and surround yourself with people that actually are supportive to actually help you on that journey. In whichever of the dozen or 24 different pathways you take, because I think that innately most people they want to see people succeed. I don't know, maybe I'm the optimist, but nobody in life goes, you know what, I'm going to set out today to go and see somebody fail. That's a sociopath. Most people want to see people succeed, and so if you can say that this is an area, meet with people, understand their journey, learn from them, and ultimately you can craft yourself a very fulfilling, rewarding, long career.
I guess maybe social science would probably be the closest thing, because I'm much the same. I came through an architecture background and then contract administration at Hutchies, and my role didn't even exist. We kind of broadened out our Indigenous program to capture things like women, and we also had a RTO, so we're bringing through our apprentices as well. So we had all these different things, and then we just kind of wrapped them all in together then. So I think
like I said, I started, I think my traineeship from memory, I think I did a Cert 2 in information technology or something, something that I go, right now it's how far from that, like from a study perspective, I'd done a few different vocational education and training, different, courses and then qualifications. I guess eventually I did think to myself, and again, this is just purely for me personally, I was like, you know what, I'd never actually I'd never done an undergraduate degree at university. I thought that would actually be something that would be worthwhile. I guess in parallel, my little humble brag is that, there was I was the first person in my family and on my wife's side, in her family that actually then ended up going, you know what, I'm going to go and actually study at uni. Yeah. But I did that as a mature age student in ladder and decided that, I don't know, I thought to myself, a bachelor's degree is typically your undergraduate degree that you get. I've got, 2 decades of experience, how, is that the best pathway? So I did a postgrad, qualification as well, just to, I guess really just to, to continually learn and to, and get some, some new insights about current, things that are happening globally and things like that. I do also think to myself though, oh man, it was a much harder, pathway in some ways, given that, at the time I was still working full time, studying full time. I was doing a bit of work with the defence. I was doing, trying to be a family person.
I did uni the right way the last 6 months. I was out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Hindsight says that would have been a much better approach.
No, it's a real credit to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I took 9 years. I was just happy to finish it before the 10th year and, had one child at the start, then had 2 children and full-time work as well. So and swapped from architecture to add on construction management as well. Yeah. So it was
competing
like this never-ending degree.
Yeah, I always say it was probably I was volunteering on a committee at the time. When I reflect back, I was like, you know what, I'm glad that I did that and that and that and that. Just not all at the same time, because it was it was absolutely a mental time for a fairly sustained period. But anyway.
Is there something that you have your eye on that's next for you? And, if you take your John Holland hat off, you just say, here's me. Is there something that is like the next mountain you want to climb or the challenge or a challenge even that you see for the industry that you'd like to be part of helping to overcome?
Yeah, look, there's not, sadly, there's no one particular thing. I think that, I guess on a personal level, it's probably for mine about the, how do we actually then have other people that, that I can help impart, and I'm, I don't know, I'm someone a bit self-deprecating. I don't want to make out like I've got all of this skills and amazing knowledge or anything like that, but there is a body of knowledge there, right? And so I want to be able to pass that to other people so that, when I'm retiring on that beach, that the work can continue, that it's, it's not all done in vain. As indicated, unfortunately, there's no one particular issue that I think is more important than the other. It can be, some of the work that we do spans everything from obviously First Nations participation to, obviously addressing domestic and family violence, which is just obviously, there's just extraordinary amounts still occurring, and we all got a role to play. Offering opportunities to, migrants and refugees who may, continually, you still get in an Uber only to be told, oh yeah, I'm an engineer, or, but not,
just
I just can't get an opportunity, and, so, I guess, the point is that, look, there's so many, being put on the spot, there's not one in particular that I really want to address. So, there's a number of things that I think that we can incrementally kind of work towards. So.
Yeah, lovely. Is there something that keeps you motivated? I imagine that any kind of person that's in a role that's trying to bring about change or inspire people with a different way of thinking, is there something that kind of keeps you motivated or keeps you inspired in your role?
The outcomes, right? And it doesn't have to be massive. Even for a large business like us, it's not, it's providing that one person there an opportunity, an employment opportunity that, they may never been given that chance before. That's the really fulfilling and rewarding piece, which keeps me motivated to go, okay, awesome, what a great outcome. Can we then create another one, and I kind of get to the point now where, in an organisation like us and in a role like mine, I want to be starting to move beyond the ones and twos. Can we create, a greater ripple, like a bigger rock in the pond, to then, create more opportunities as well. Because we're not starting on our journey now, we should be looking at, what else we can be doing. So that's definitely the big motivator for me that, I think where I'd become despondent is if they stopped, if all of a sudden for whatever reason, the organisation or the industry or whatever it might be didn't value doing those activities, those things, then, I think that's when it's becomes quite that would be demotivating. So.
I don't think we'll ever run into that problem. I think as an industry we probably forget that we build things and it's a built environment, but it's very human. We work very closely together. Those people that you work with are the same people for a lot of hours, for a lot of weeks on that job before you go to the next one where you've got the same subby anyway, that you still have the same relationship for 10 years. So I think that it's a very human and a very connected and a very social industry that we probably don't always acknowledge or recognise. That it's just, especially if you've only ever been in this industry. So I don't think we'll ever run into that problem.
Well, and look, and this is why again I always say pay it forward, right? If you've been, if you're an individual who's been given a job, that you may not have necessarily had that start without a bit of a hand up. If you're a supplier that that's been given your first contract, or and then you're in a position that you can do something in the future, because everyone, that employee will eventually probably become a manager. That supplier will grow, or they can make small decisions. Just pay it forward, right? Because that's it's definitely something that if I can literally just try and articulate those to those people, they might forget it, they might not care, whatever it might be, but 9 times out of 10, you actually, that's how you can sort of see some of that some further outcomes come from the work you do.
Do you have any off the top of your head? You might not.
Sure.
It's all right if you don't. Any of those key stats, like a dollar value that John Holland spent with Indigenous businesses, any fun facts that... Fun facts,
all right, you will test me here, but look, and again, I normally don't spruik them off because, we want to be doing it for the right reasons, but, look, we're incredibly proud that certainly First Nations business, we've probably got one of the largest spends of a construction company nationally, and particularly here in Queensland, that we've grown year on year over the last 5 years. By the numbers, I'm going to say somewhere in the order of nationally, I think we're now over $600 million over a 5-year period. When we talk about social enterprise, again, it's not a humble brag, but we've been consistently across multiple years one of the top spenders with social enterprise as well for our industry. There are obviously other parallel industries that do some fantastic stuff, and I'd never want to detract from them either. When we talk about from an employment perspective, we've got a tremendous partnership with a couple of organisations to support refugee and asylum seekers. We've now, I think it's, at last count, I think we're over 160 odd, people that we've provided an employment opportunity to. Wow. I think that it's in the order of about 80% retention that we've got, in the business as well. I don't know what other stats
awesome.
Can I. I'm trying to think what other stats I can pull out of my proverbial. Really awesome. Because it's
but like I said,
I don't. Yeah, but I guess I'd also I don't want to focus on that on the numbers per se, because I don't know, they are. I feel like they're very good, but Absolutely. You can always be doing more, and I kind of just feel like sometimes the 160 plus people, it's they're people, right?
People,
they're
exactly.
not just numbers as well. So
every one of them has a family and a
Yep.
future, and
that's the next generation of children who then see their parents in employment, where they, you were the first person in your family to go to uni.
Yep.
That's the first person in their family to be employed.
Yep, absolutely.
That's just mind blowing, and that encourages them to then grow up and get a job. So no, I think it's definitely
we actually did when I actually went out to a big project when I left John Holland that first time I mentioned, and we were largely working in the Ipswich region, so it was a $2 billion road and bridge project between Dinmore and Goodna. So a few challenges experienced by the community there, and we did a whole raft of different things. And it stands front of mind to me because it's probably one of the sometimes working in this industry, you could deliver lots of different projects. That's one that will always be top of mind. But we actually did a piece, toward the latter part, and I actually, one thing I learned is we should have probably started it earlier, where we started to actually get some metrics around look, what does it mean, obviously, for you to have a job, like how's that impacted on your, your family unit, that's right.
Sometimes we collect the numbers and the quantity, but not always the quality.
I think that, like if, I don't know what the numbers were, but let's just say hypothetically it was 100 people, or whatever it might be. What's the true impact, where it's actually probably more like 300 people or 500 or, again, you know, I did all right with the numbers before. I don't, you know, like that was, you know, over 15 years ago.
Well, it improves my life every day when I have to drive over there.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
So,
you know, I built it with my own blood, sweat and tears as a pretensioneer, I like to put it. No. It's great to be obviously part of that whole
every
team.
time when I'm driving over there now.
Yeah, all of the coloured bridge structures that I learn about architecture and things as well. That about why Red Bank, you know, just so you're aware, Red Bank Bridge is actually more of an orange. And when I asked why isn't it red,
it's definitely orange.
Well, because red's an aggressive colour, and we don't want to see, you know, people on the roads being aggressive. So yeah, anyway, always learning.
Psychology, colour psychology.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we are sitting here this afternoon in Bakery Lane, and one of the big things that we like to do as a business is engage with our local community here in the Valley as well. And there's some amazing female-owned and family-owned businesses in the laneway. So we wanted to thank you for braving the heat.
My pleasure.
And sitting in the laneway with us this afternoon to...
A new spot for me to try, you know. I wasn't even aware.
I highly recommend Nug. The food is fantastic. I'm going to Joy on Thursday night for date night, so that'll be my first time at Joy. Nice. It is monumentally difficult to get in.
Right, okay.
So I've
had there just yesterday. They just took me straight away.
Oh my God.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So there Thursday night, there's a beautiful wine bar. It is like a really, really great space, and we love being part of this community. And I think engaging with the community and feeling part of it helps inspire us to do better work and to make some change and have some impact.
Ripple network. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you very much for being part of our little community.
My pleasure. I hope I did it justice.
Today, we really appreciate you taking the time, and it was a great chat. You're obviously a great speaker. I think that radio career
wasted
should get a second look in the next phase of your life. You know, instead of the beach, it could be a radio gig,
a retirement gig,
on the way
on
the way to the beach.
Radio, you know, like now
Maybe you can give us reviews, just travel around and tell us where we should and shouldn't go.
Yeah, all right. I'll give it due consideration, but I think you'll probably still see me in this industry and these sort of roles for a little bit longer yet, unfortunately.
Well, you should be congratulated for the work that you're doing. It's really great, and we really appreciate your time, and we wish you well, onwards and upwards to do fantastic things. If the family at Helix can ever be of assistance to you, we're definitely very aligned in values and vision. So
thank you both. And
well
look,
done.
I think that it's a credit that you're actually even creating this sort of platform as well to try and spread the word more broadly. Because I think that's the thing, right? Like the incremental change that we'll all see. So I thank you both as well. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in today. Before we wrap up, here's an important disclaimer. Everything we've discussed is for information purposes only and should not be considered personalised advice. Whether we touched on legal, financial, medical, about your specific situation before taking any action. Got any questions about today's episode or ideas for future topics? Reach out to the Helix team. We'd love to hear from you. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with someone who might benefit or connect with us on social media. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll catch you next time.